Before this video begins, I just want to quickly establish that whenever I refer to Disney in this video, I'm referring to Disney Animation Studios, not Disney the multi-billion-dollar evil by and large corporation. This means that I'm not taking their questionable morals into account, and I'm also not including the other studios they own. This includes Pixar, which won't be a part of my argument. I'm also not going to be including the Aardman movies made under Dreamworks in my argument either, as most of the creative control for those movies was from Aardman instead of Dreamworks. Just wanted to get this immediately cleared up. Anyway, enjoy the video. So, I've been on a bit of a Dreamworks kick as of late. A lot of you may already know that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish has recently become my new favourite animated movie. As a result, I not only rewatched that movie 3 times in 1 month, but I also went back to a lot of the previous Dreamworks films. This ranges from old favourites like the Shrek trilogy, films I never gave enough credit to before like the Kung Fu Panda sequels, and even a few films I never got around to watching at all, like The Prince of Egypt. Yeah, sorry it took so long to watch Prince. However, as I was making my way through these movies, I realised something. I realised that throughout my entire life, and especially recently, that if I ever want to watch a non-Pixar animated movie, I almost always gravitate to Dreamworks over Disney. Whenever I think of an animated movie, images from Dreamworks movies come to my mind before images from Disney movies. I recently realised that I actually prefer Dreamworks to Disney. A bold statement, I know. How is this studio founded out of spite by a dickhead, where they are best known for crude humour and pop culture references, better than Disney, the studio which first created animated feature films? Well, I don't actually have an answer to that. You see, Disney is probably the objectively better studio because of its influence, importance, and technical skills. However, I titled the video Why I Prefer Dreamworks, not Why Dreamworks is Better, and that was intentional, because that is what this video is going to be focused on. This video is going to focus on the fact that I do get more enjoyment out of Dreamworks, and it will also try to explain why I feel this way. So buckle up as we've got a long road ahead. Here is why I personally prefer Dreamworks to Disney. So I think the obvious place to start with this video is to establish the fact that Dreamworks does indeed make great movies. In fact, they make fantastic movies. Yeah, their track record isn't perfect, but then again, neither is Disney's. For me personally, the highs of Dreamworks more than makes up for their lows. If a Dreamworks movie lands, it absolutely soars and becomes a true work of art. The best example of the artistry in Dreamworks is probably in The Prince of Egypt. Yeah, I really was missing out by not checking this out for so many years. The Prince of Egypt is a thematically rich and deeply mature adaptation of the Moses story. It doesn't sugarcoat any horrific story beats, its visuals are off the charts, the score and musical numbers rival the Disney musicals, and the main story between Moses and Ramesses is deeply impactful and hard-hitting. There are so many moments from this film which are just so profound, and as a whole, everything put together makes The Prince of Egypt more than just a movie. It truly is a work of art, and I think it's better than every film from the Disney Renaissance. Yeah, I said it. But that's not the only Dreamworks masterpiece which I call a work of art. Obviously, I also consider The Last Wish to be a work of art as it's my favourite animated movie. However, I've got a massive analysis planned for this movie, so I'll save any thoughts for then. However, even outside their two 10 out of 10 masterpieces, there are so many miraculous works of art Dreamworks has produced, from Kung Fu Panda to How to Train Your Dragon. All of these are films which I enjoy rewatching, and all leave a profound impact on me as a viewer in various ways. Whereas with Disney, I honestly don't have many strong reactions to most of the films outside of the Renaissance. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed films like The Great Mouse Detective, Wreck-It Ralph, Zootopia, Moana, and Encanto, however that's only a small percentage of the non-Renaissance films. Oh yeah, just so you know, most of my criticisms towards Disney are outside of the Renaissance. If I was just judging the Disney movies from the 90s, then this video would be very different. However, I'm taking into account their whole back catalogue, and the thing is, I'm just not really big on the non-Renaissance Disney films. So many of these films just aren't memorable to me and leave little impact, whereas many Dreamworks movies leave me impacted in so many ways. I think there's two main things which elevate the impact of Dreamworks movies for me, and that's subversion and sequels. Let's be honest here, there has never been a good Disney sequel. They are either mediocre, awful, or one of the direct-to-video sequels which we don't talk about. Apparently some people like The Rescuers Down Under though. I don't get it personally, but good for you. Dreamworks on the other hand has some of the best sequels ever made, even when looking outside of animation. I mentioned the Kung Fu Panda sequels in the intro to this video, but I was specifically referring to the second movie in my praise. The third movie is definitely enjoyable and quite underrated I feel, but Kung Fu Panda 2 is a truly phenomenal film. It's dark, mature, and an emotional roller coaster, which I personally prefer to the original. However, the Kung Fu Panda series isn't the only example of this, as there is also the mature continuation of the narrative present in the How to Train Your Dragon sequels, plus there's Shrek 2, which is a movie most people would agree is better than the original in every possible way, from the humour to the characters to the themes to I Need a Hero. Oh, and there's The Last Wish of course, but I've talked about that movie enough. Now, I know someone is going to say, well, what about these movies? I'd rather sit through Boss Baby 2 than Ralph Breaks the Internet, personally. At least Boss Baby 2 doesn't ruin characters I actually care about. Plus, the bad Dreamworks movies are very important in my opinion on the studio as a whole, but we'll get back to them later. As for subversion, Dreamworks has a track record of completely subverting the expectations of the viewers and catching them off guard, which ultimately helps to create incredibly memorable experiences. Shrek is the obvious example of this, as it's an obvious parody and subversion of fairy tale tropes. However, it also subverts the viewer by showing a deeply relatable and emotional story underneath the outline of being a Disney parody. It has so many more layers to it than it seems. Kung Fu Panda has a goofy as hell title and premise, yet it is actually a thematically rich, gorgeously animated, genuine martial arts movie. How to Train Your Dragon features Vikings and dragons and a protagonist called Hiccup, yet it is more than some generic brand to sell toys to preteen boys, and is instead, once again, a mature story with gorgeous animation. And finally, Megamind is a complete subversion of superhero tropes, and the film uses this subversion as an opportunity to show themes such as nature versus nurture, and uses the genre it's subverting as an opportunity to provide a cautionary tale of the r/nice guys. All of these things together mean that the best of Dreamworks can be immensely memorable and incredibly impactful works of art, which are also able to successfully continue their stories from one movie to the next within a series. Conversely, a lot of Disney movies can feel incredibly unmemorable to me. Is Cinderella iconic? Sure. But could I tell you anything that happened in the Disney version which wasn't already in the original fairy tale? No, I couldn't. I couldn't care less about these goddamn mice. I also could not tell you a single plot point from Bambi outside of the mother's death, and I swear I fell asleep during those wartime package films. In general, I just find a lot of Disney movies unmemorable outside of the songs and villains. With a couple of exceptions, I don't particularly remember deeper themes or rich narratives in Disney movies outside of the Renaissance. Yet with Dreamworks, their best movies have too many things which I find memorable, from their lovable characters, imaginative worlds, and so many emotional beats. Couple that with the fact that Dreamworks can also craft fantastic songs, and some of the best villains in animation which even rival Disney villains, such as Jack Horner, Tai Lung, Fairy Godmother, Lord Shen, Ramesses, Titan, and Death, and you've got a studio which I find way more memorable on the whole. Overall, the best of Dreamworks rivals and, for me, often surpasses the best of Disney, and I am almost always more likely to rewatch these films. However, notice how I said the best of Dreamworks. I can already hear many of you saying, sure, films like Kung Fu Panda and Megamind are fantastic, but Dreamworks is also the studio behind Shark Tale and The Boss Baby. How can you say that you prefer them to Disney? Well, that leads me on to my next point.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 can't touch this. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 can't touch this.
Here's a question for you. Have you ever watched a movie which you know is bad, yet couldn't help but enjoy it because of its meme quality? Most of us have, whether it's The Room, Sharknado, Cats, or
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
For me, I love a good funny bad movie, and Dreamworks are the kings of that. Yeah, this is the main reason why I established at the start of this video that my reasons aren't objective, because I'm over here saying that ironic enjoyment is one reason why I prefer Dreamworks to Disney. But to be fair, it does add a lot. You see, the worst of Dreamworks consists of some of the most bottom-of-the-barrel garbage put to animation in the 21st century, whereas the worst of Disney is painfully boring and just unenjoyable. Which of those sounds more fascinating to you? For me, I would much rather watch an awful Dreamworks movie like Shark Tale over the worst of Disney like those awful wartime package era films, or Dinosaur. Films like Shark Tale, B-Movie, and even The Boss Baby to some extent are an absolute joy to watch and meme. When I rewatched the B-Movie in December of last year, I realised that it was the movie I laughed to the most out of everything I saw that year. That is very impressive considering the fact that in 2022, I watched many iconic and hilarious comedies like Hot Fuzz, A Fish Called Wanda, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and many silent movies. Yet despite that, B-Movie made me laugh the most.
Watch it, Benson. I could blow right now.
This isn't a good fella. This is a bad fella.
B-Movie is not a good movie, but I would happily watch it again and again and again because it is a comedic masterpiece. Compare that to something like Sword in the Stone, which is a completely dull, forgettable, and unenjoyable mess of a film. I am absolutely one of those people who believes that a bad movie is infinitely more enjoyable than a boring movie, just as long as the bad movie isn't over the top in how mean-spirited it is. It's why The Lorax is one of my favourite Illumination movies, despite being objectively one of the absolute worst, and it's also why I vastly prefer Dreamworks' output of bad movies over Disney's. When you watch a bad Dreamworks movie, you are going to get a memorable, ironic masterpiece which has a ton of memes to its name. These fundamentally broken movies are a joy to pick apart and talk about. If you watch a bad Disney movie though, you're probably going to be bored out of your mind. Do you see Black Cauldron or Fun and Fancy Free memes? No. Do you see Shark Tale and B-movie memes? Absolutely. Alongside that, a lot of the bad Disney movies, which aren't boring, are instead just frustrating and annoying, and so aren't enjoyable. Chicken Little is the obvious example due to how mean-spirited it is, and I also already mentioned how bad Ralph Breaks the Internet is. Don't misquote me though, there are absolutely some Dreamworks movies which are just plain bad with no ironic enjoyment whatsoever, like Shrek the Third for example, my least favourite Dreamworks movie. However, I feel like the full list of bad Dreamworks movies which are just plain unenjoyable is far less than Disney's. As a result, the bad movies are why I get so much enjoyment out of most of Dreamworks' back catalogue. However, we've talked about the best of both studios and the worst. What about all those films in the middle? Why does Dreamworks still have the edge? Well, I've alluded to it already when talking about why I still love the bad Dreamworks movies. And let's just say that the memes keep coming and they don't stop coming. Dreamworks and memes go hand in hand like bread and butter, or the government and bad decisions.
I am not really a math guy.
For example, Shrek wouldn't be Shrek without his all-star memes. However, alongside Shrek, I feel like most Dreamworks movies are identified by their memes. I think some people don't realise that for many of us, the meme moments are what make Dreamworks movies so damn enjoyable. Disney definitely does have some memeable movies, most notably The Emperor's New Groove.
Pull the lever, Kronk.
However, most of Disney is treated deadly seriously, or it has memes which don't elevate the experience and instead take the piss out of a bad plot decision which makes no sense but the film tries to treat seriously.
That was his mistake.
All the memes are just revolved around popular songs like Let It Go or We Don't Talk About Bruno. Dreamworks, meanwhile, has meme moments in almost every one of their movies. Yes, they definitely do have more serious movies like How to Train Your Dragon and The Prince of Egypt, which is definitely a good thing to have, but the problem is the fact that some of the more serious Disney movies think they are better than they actually are, yet at the end of the day, they just aren't good movies, whereas these two are actually good movies. However, in terms of the lighter and more comedic films, the meme moments not only elevate the comedy already present, but they can also make up for any jokes which may not land in those movies. Every mildly unfunny joke in something like Shrek is made up for by the meme moments. Not every weaker Dreamworks movie with a lighter tone has memes to it though, which is the reason why I dislike the Trolls movies so much, as they're just too safe and mushy to be enjoyable ironically or unironically. Seriously, I would honestly much rather watch The Boss Baby 10 times to check out Trolls World Tour. However, most of Dreamworks, good or bad, popular or no, has some level of meme quality to it.
I hereby award Mr. Peabody a presidential pardon. Me too! I've done worse.
Some people may use this fact as a reason for hating Dreamworks, which is a fair enough opinion to have, but for me, it is what ultimately makes Dreamworks so damn enjoyable.
Right here. All your needs will be met.
I'm hungry!
In a minute!
Dreamworks movies are on average my most quoted movies thanks to fantastic meme moments like,
You're horrible.
You're an irredeemable monster!
Oh, what took you so long, idiot?
to,
There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England.
and of course,
You dense, irritating miniature beast of burden! Ogres are like onions. End of story. Bye-bye. See you later.
these are quotes which have been repeated online for years, with the exception of the moments from The Last Wish which have instead completely circled the whole internet with memes in just a few short months.
You're not gonna shoot a puppy, are you, Jack?
Yeah, in the face. Why?
What also helps to keep these movies humorous is the fact that usually if the writing isn't great, the voice actors are still able to elevate the whole experience, especially in the case of Shark Tale. Will Smith, Robert De Niro, and especially Martin Scorsese are absolutely fantastic in the film.
Come on, now who's your puff daddy, huh? Who takes care of you, huh?
Jack Black's Lenny still sucks though, and this is coming from a Jack Black fan. Overall, Dreamworks memes are able to make the bad movies enjoyable and the great movies more enjoyable. However, they also allow for the movies smack bang in the middle to also become incredibly memorable. Take for instance, the Madagascar movies. Are these movies objectively great? They're decent. Not amazing, but they pass as movies. Are they hilarious and memeable though? Absolutely. I once saw a video on my YouTube recommended titled The Penguins of Madagascar, but it's just the memes. Naturally, I watched the video and was absolutely on the floor laughing at many points.
You don't have a family and we're all going to die. Sorry. What?
After realizing how hilarious this movie actually was, I went down the rabbit hole of Dreamworks memes, and it was some of the most fun I had watching movie clips.
Sherman, I've got to get you out of here before you touch yourself.
As a result, this meme compilation was what ultimately made me want to make the video you're watching right now. I'm not even joking. So thank you, Phone, I don't know how to pronounce it. Now I know you could just say that the Madagascar movies were designed to be comedies first, so naturally they became memes. But I think it's also worth noting that there are many Disney comedies such as Home on the Range and Goddamn Chicken Little, which are just worse movies and worse comedies in every conceivable way, and so haven't become memes. I think this fact really highlights the stronger comedy present in Dreamworks movies. Irony, memes, and voice acting don't make the best Dreamworks jokes funny, and instead, good writing does.
Catnip.
That's no mine.
I'm going to step away from the memes for just a second here, as I do think that the sense of humour in most Dreamworks movies is so underappreciated, and is way more than just crude humour. Yes, the crude humour is undoubtedly present, and a lot of it isn't that funny. Let's be honest here, the worst part of How to Train Your Dragon is the crude humour from the annoying side characters. However, so many jokes from Dreamworks movies are absolute genius.
Did you put this one in, this Depelter Turbo?
That's a contraband item, ma'am, as it is illegal in every state, except Texas.
I mentioned the Penguins of Madagascar earlier, and so I have to say that this joke is absolutely amazing.
Helen, hunt them down. William, hurt them. Hallie, bury them. Hugh, Jack, man the battle stations. Kevin, bake on. We're still gonna need that victory cake.
But overall, so many Dreamworks jokes land in films like Kung Fu Panda, Shrek 2, and especially Megamind. Films like Shrek 2 definitely have moments of genius like the Farbucks joke, but Megamind is absolutely top tier in the comedy department, from the slapstick to the action set pieces, like Hal recreating Donkey Kong to Mr. Blue Sky, and it's also incredibly ahead of its time with all the jokes of Hal being an incel. Every single joke in this movie lands for me, and I am always referencing it and laughing along. Let's be honest here, Megamind is infinitely funnier than Despicable Me. But yeah, the best of Dreamworks has some belters of jokes, but even some of their lesser talked about movies have fantastic jokes, which led to them becoming memes. For me, one of the funniest characters in any Dreamworks movie is Agamemnon from Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and that is due to many factors like Patrick Warburton and zingers like this.
Don't taste me, bro.
But this joke is absolutely genius, and I still don't know how they got away with it.
Yeah, and don't even get me started about Oedipus. Let's just say that you do not want to be at his house over the holidays. It's awkward.
Yeah, I just find Agamemnon absolutely hilarious, and this is coming from a movie which not many people talk about. Yet, I still think it's hilarious and makes the movie as a whole incredibly memorable. You know how Schaefer's obsessed over the Verminator from Over the Hedge? Can Agamemnon be my ultimate Dreamworks stan character? Oh wait, no, that's Burrito. Can Agamemnon be my pick for the most epic Dreamworks character? Okay, cool. You know, I've just realized that I've spent the last few minutes just posting Dreamworks memes instead of properly praising the studio. Sorry about that, but I think this does a good job in showing you how much fun I can really have with the studio. Compare that to Disney, where so many of their movies I have no opinions on whatsoever. I feel completely indifferent to films like Lady and the Tramp, Oliver and Company, The Rescuers, or even The Black Cauldron. That movie was a failure in every way, but as I've been trying to say, it's not a fun or interesting failure like Shark Tale. Mediocre to bad Disney movies come and go in my mind through the snap of a finger, yet I could go on for days memeing films like Megamind, Madagascar, or the Bee Movie. But let's rein it back in, and finally move away from the memes to talk about the genuine merits of Dreamworks once again, by talking about its presentation in its animation. So we've established that I find Dreamworks a lot more enjoyable than Disney because of their more subversive and memorable films like Megamind and Rise of the Guardians. Oh yeah, Rise of the Guardians is also a banger. I forgot to mention it earlier in the video, so I just wanted to mention it now. However, the presentation of Dreamworks is what ultimately confirmed my opinion that I prefer them to Disney. Dreamworks is a studio with so many different styles of animation. Films like Shrek are reminiscent of Disney movies but use 3D animation instead, whereas films like How to Train Your Dragon have a more realistic art style to it in spite of the dragons present, and films like Captain Underpants are a bit more stylistic. These different styles of animation, depending on the franchise, help to give Dreamworks as a whole a nice bit of variety. Not every animation style works though, like with Shark Tale obviously, which just looks hilariously unfinished, but at least it looks different from other Dreamworks films, instead of looking the exact same like every Illumination movie for example. the bad animation of Shark Tale oozes with personality. Hell, I'd even argue that the animation in The Boss Baby can be creative at points, and give the film some personality. And even though I don't like the movies, the Trolls movies do have gorgeous animation. However, whilst there can be some poor looking animation from Dreamworks, there are also so many fantastic looking Dreamworks movies which all feel so visually distinct from one another. Kung Fu Panda and Megamind are two movies released only a few years from each other, yet they look incredibly different from one another. Maybe it's because one has animals and one has humans, but it could also very well be because the genres for each film reflect the style. Kung Fu Panda is a martial arts movie, so the fight choreography is the focus of the animation, and it looks stunning alongside having various 2D sequences which are reminiscent of ancient Chinese art. Meanwhile, Megamind is a subversive superhero movie, which means that it not only focuses on the animation for the fight or flight scenes, but also ensures the characters look good because of the more personal story present. Everything I just said about the animation though, is something I only just recently noticed about the studio when watching so many of their movies back to back. So maybe it's not the most noticeable thing ever, but overall, Dreamworks is definitely a studio with so many different and unique styles to it, which as a result make the studio as a whole feel so memorable. And that's not to mention the fact that films like Kung Fu Panda still look fantastic today, 14 years later. Some of Dreamworks has definitely aged more than others animation wise, especially their pre-Kung Fu Panda films, but the variety makes up for any dated elements. And I haven't even mentioned the 2D animated films which all look absolutely fantastic, except for The Beast and Sinbad. The reason I'm mentioning all of this stuff about the variety in animation though, is because Disney doesn't really do that. Yes, its animation style has changed over the years from frame by frame to Xerox to digital animation to CG animation, however a lot of the films in those eras look visually identical, again with the exception of the Renaissance. An obvious example of how similar they could look at points is with The Jungle Book and Robin Hood. Look, I know there were budget reasons for why a lot of Robin Hood famously reused animation, however this fact really is more noticeable when the films look so visually similar alongside the movements being copied. Little John is literally Baloo with different coloured fur, same voice actor and everything, and it just kinda feels like they took the easy way out with the low budget. Meanwhile, I can't call any two Dreamworks movies this visually similar, unless they're in the same franchise obviously. Even their more low budget films like The Bad Guys for instance, still look visually different from everything else, in fact it looks visually gorgeous. However, whilst there are many examples of Disney movies feeling visually repetitive through the years, easily the best case of this is in the present day. Recent Dreamworks movies like the aforementioned Bad Guys and The Last Wish have had very unique, stylistic and fun animation styles which have gotten people talking, whereas all modern Disney movies look exactly the same from one another. Not to mention, they also look exactly the same as movies released nearly a decade ago. Films like Raya and the Last Dragon and Strange World could have been released back in 2017 or something, and it wouldn't feel out of place. Meanwhile, Dreamworks is continuing with a variety in animation by taking inspiration from films like Spider-Verse, which is allowing them to fully use the animation to not only reflect the genre and style of their films, but to also tell a story which could only be told in animation. The Last Wish is a fun and flashy action film in a fairy tale world, so the drop frames aid the action and the colours aid the world. It makes it feel like you're watching the images from a storybook, and it makes the whole thing a treat for the eyes. And that's not to mention the fact that the general direction in the animation is a lot more stylistic, with cool bits of direction and editing like the travel montage for example. Ultimately, Dreamworks seems to now be taking full advantage of animation as a medium. You can do so many different styles of it and create striking visuals which will overall make the viewing experience so much better. Disney on the other hand, just does the same style over and over again no matter the franchise, and they don't do anything interesting with it. Nowadays, Disney only seems to get creative with the visuals during musical sequences. Overall, these Disney movies definitely look great on their own, but variety is very important, and when looking at these studios as a whole, I'll take the variety present in Dreamworks animation any day. Not to mention, Dreamworks taking full advantage of the medium of animation is a lot cooler to see than Disney, who clearly doesn't care about their animated movies anymore. In conclusion, Dreamworks is an incredibly unfairly hated studio who has made some true works of art over the years. Some of their films like The Prince of Egypt and The Last Wish are better than all of Disney in my opinion, and as a whole, Dreamworks is a master of crafting compelling sequels and telling subversive and memorable stories. Furthermore, they are willing to try different styles within their animation, which provides visual variety which is something Disney just doesn't seem to do a lot of the time. However, alongside the highs of Dreamworks, the lows are still more enjoyable than the lows of Disney because of the ironic enjoyment I can get out of films like Shark Tale when compared to boring messes like Dinosaur. Alongside that, the sheer amount of meme potential present in most Dreamworks movies helped to make the studio as a whole an absolute blast to watch and rewatch, whereas so much of Disney ultimately feels forgettable, and I have no real desire to rewatch many of their movies outside of the Renaissance. Disney can definitely be an amazing studio with plenty of incredible, iconic and influential films. However, as a whole, I have found myself getting a lot more enjoyment out of Dreamworks. But what do you guys think about this debate? Do you have any major rebuttals to my point, or do you actually agree with me? Let me know in the comments below, but please be civil and respectful. Anyway, thanks for watching this overly long analysis video on why Dreamworks is actually a fantastic studio. Go watch The Last Wish and The Prince of Egypt, and take care. Goodbye everyone.